Geography optional, advanced level. How does geographical space affect India's relations with its neighboring countries? Core argument. Geographical space is not merely territory, it is a combination of location, distance, boundaries, terrain, resources, connectivity and spatial configuration. India's neighborhood relations are therefore strongly conditioned by its central location in the Indian Ocean plus Himalayan barriers plus porous land frontiers plus strategic choke points plus unequal spatial accessibility. Spatiality, accessibility, interaction, interdependence, cooperation, conflict. 1. India's centrality in South Asian space. India occupies a centripetal position in South Asia. India accounts for the largest share of South Asian territory, population and economy. Almost all South Asian countries are geographically connected to India directly or indirectly. India projects into the Indian Ocean, connecting West Asia, Africa, Southeast Asia and East Asia. Spatial implication. India becomes both a bridge and a barrier. Bridge Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, Bay of Bengal, Indian Ocean, Southeast Asia. Barrier Himalayan mountain wall limits direct overland interaction with China. Geographical centrality, neighborhood interdependence. 2. Distance decay, intensity of relations. According to Tobler's first law of geography, places that are closer are generally more strongly interconnected. India's relations demonstrate a strong distance decay effect. Neighbor. Spatial proximity. Major implication. Nepal. Open porous border. Deep socio-economic interaction. Bhutan. Himalayan proximity. Security plus hydropower cooperation. Bangladesh. Long contiguous border. Trade, migration, rivers, connectivity. Sri Lanka. Maritime proximity. Indian Ocean strategic relations. Pakistan. Contiguous border. Security dilemma. Myanmar. Eastern land frontier. Act East plus connectivity. China. Long Himalayan boundary. Strategic competition. Geography optional angle. Distance does not automatically produce friendship, it increases interaction, and interaction can produce either cooperation or conflict. 3. Himalayan space, barrier plus buffer plus frontier. The Himalayas have historically functioned as a barrier, buffer, strategic frontier. Nepal, Bhutan. The Himalayas historically separated the Indian plains from the Tibetan plateau, but modern infrastructure has reduced their barrier effect. Hence, physical barrier. Transport, connectivity, economic and strategic interaction. China. The Himalayas do not completely isolate India and China because passes provide strategic corridors. River valleys facilitate movement. Infrastructure reduces physical isolation. High-altitude borderlands have become strategic spaces. Therefore, the Himalayan region has changed from a geographical barrier into a contested strategic space. 4. Indo-Gangetic Plains, shared space, with Bangladesh, Pakistan. The Indo-Gangetic Brahmaputra Plain creates strong geographical continuity. India, Bangladesh. Shared river systems. Floodplains. Agricultural ecosystems. Linguistic cultural zones. Migration corridors. Deltaic environment. Thus, shared physical space, shared ecological problems, need for transboundary governance. Examples. Ganga, Brahmaputra, Meghna system floods, plus sediment plus water sharing plus erosion plus delta vulnerability. India, Bangladesh cooperation contestation. India, Pakistan. The Punjab plain creates geographical continuity across the international boundary. But the same geographical continuity also produces cross-border movement plus river interdependence plus strategic vulnerability. Hence, the same geography that promotes interaction can generate geopolitical insecurity. 5. River basins ignore political boundaries. This is one of the strongest geographical determinants of India's neighborhood relations. Transboundary river systems. India, Nepal, Kosi, Gandak, Mahakali. India, Bangladesh, Ganga, Brahmaputra, Teesta. India, Pakistan, Indus River system. Political boundary, hydrological boundary. Therefore, hydrological unity versus political fragmentation. This creates both cooperation, irrigation, hydropower, flood management, navigation. and conflict, water allocation, dams, seasonal flows, downstream concerns. 6. The porous border effect. India has exceptionally varied border geographies. Nepal. Open border, high mobility, trade plus employment plus social interaction. Bangladesh. Riverine plus agricultural plus densely populated border, migration plus smuggling plus border management challenges. Myanmar. Forest plus hills plus ethnic territories, limited accessibility plus insurgency plus informal movement. Pakistan. Highly securitized border, physical proximity but low functional connectivity. Key concept. Geographical proximity, functional proximity. A useful diagram. Geographical proximity. Border conditions. Accessibility bata permeability. Functional interaction. Nature of relations. 7. The shape of India and strategic vulnerability. India's peninsular projection into the Indian Ocean gives it a unique maritime geography. Advantage. India sits close to Arabian Sea, Bay of Bengal, major Indian Ocean shipping routes, approaches to Strait of Hormuz, approaches to Strait of Malacca. Hence, India has maritime strategic depth. But India's neighborhood is not confined to land borders. Its maritime neighbors include Sri Lanka plus Maldives plus Mauritius plus Seychelles plus broader Indian Ocean island space. Thus, India's neighborhood policy is increasingly land neighborhood plus maritime neighborhood. 8. Sri Lanka, proximity without land contiguity. Sri Lanka demonstrates that maritime distance can be functionally smaller than terrestrial distance. India and Sri Lanka are separated by the Palk Strait, but their geographical proximity has created cultural interaction, maritime trade, fishing disputes, security cooperation, energy connectivity possibilities, advanced geographical concept, relative distance, absolute distance. Although Sri Lanka is separated by sea, its proximity to India's southern coast makes it strategically significant. 9. Bay of Bengal as a shared geographical space. The Bay of Bengal connects India, Bangladesh, Myanmar, Sri Lanka, Thailand, Southeast Asia. Therefore, the bay is evolving from a peripheral maritime space into a strategic interaction space. India's spatial strategy. Act East plus Sagar plus BIMSTEC plus Indo-Pacific. Attempts to transform India's geographical location into geopolitical advantage. Thus, choke points and India's neighborhood. Geographical space becomes strategically important when movement is concentrated through narrow corridors. Important spaces. Malacca Strait, Indian Ocean, Pacific Ocean. Hormuz Strait, Persian Gulf, Indian Ocean. Bab el Mandeb, Red Sea, Indian Ocean. India's position near these maritime corridors gives it geostrategic leverage, while also exposing it to external power competition. 11. Chicken's neck spatial vulnerability. The Siliguri corridor is a classic example of how spatial configuration affects geopolitics. Ne India. Siliguri corridor. Mainland India. Its narrowness creates connectivity vulnerability, military vulnerability, strategic sensitivity, importance of Bangladesh connectivity, spatial paradox. Bangladesh's geographical location can either constrain or facilitate India's northeast connectivity. Hence, India-Bangladesh relations northeast spatial integration. 12. Myanmar, India's land bridge to Southeast Asia. India's northeast is geographically connected to Southeast Asia through Myanmar. Therefore, India, Myanmar, Thailand, Southeast Asia. Myanmar acts as India's eastern geographical gateway. This explains the geographical logic of Act East policy. India, Myanmar, Thailand connectivity. Kaladan multimodal transit. Northeast economic integration. Thus, geography converts Myanmar from merely a neighbor into a strategic gateway. 13. Nepal, Bhutan, landlocked but India connected. Nepal and Bhutan are landlocked Himalayan states, creating structural dependence on connectivity through neighboring countries. India provides access, transit, markets, ports, energy connectivity. Nepal India-Nepal spatial interaction is shaped by open border, terry plains, Himalayan topography, river systems, trade routes. Bhutan. Bhutan's geography creates strong dependence on Indian connectivity, Indian markets, hydropower transmission networks. Therefore, landlockedness increases the geopolitical importance of transit geography. 14. Resource geography. Neighborhood relations are also shaped by the spatial distribution of resources. Rivers. India, Nepal, Bangladesh. Hydropower. Nepal plus Bhutan. Fisheries. India, Sri Lanka. Energy corridors. India, Bangladesh, Myanmar and Indian Ocean routes. Minerals, strategic resources. India's wider neighborhood. Thus, resource location spatial interdependence geopolitical bargaining. 15. Disaster geography. South Asia is a shared disaster space. Common geographical hazards. Himalayan earthquakes. GLOFs. Floods. Cyclones. Landslides. Riverbank erosion. Sea level rise. Coastal vulnerability. Example. Himalayan earthquake zone. India plus Nepal plus Bhutan plus China. Therefore, disasters create a form of geography of shared vulnerability. This creates opportunities for regional early warning systems plus disaster diplomacy plus climate cooperation. 16. Cultural geography also transcends political borders. Political boundaries often cut across older cultural regions. Examples. India, Nepal. Mithila, Terai and shared religious networks. India, Bangladesh. Bengali cultural space. India, Bhutan. Buddhist Himalayan cultural connections. India, Sri Lanka. Tamil cultural and religious linkages. Thus, political space, cultural space. This produces both people-to-people connectivity, migration, diaspora networks, identity politics, occasional security sensitivities. 17. Geographical space security dilemma. India's geographical position creates asymmetric strategic perceptions. For smaller neighbors, India can appear as a large neighboring power whose physical proximity creates dependence. For India, the same neighborhood may appear as a security buffer and strategic frontier. Hence, geography generates different perceptions of the same space. Example. India's perspective. Neighborhood. Security buffer. Strategic depth. Smaller neighbor's perspective. Neighborhood. Economic dependence. Need for strategic autonomy. This is an important geopolitical perception gap. 18. China's geography changes India's neighborhood relations. India's neighborhood cannot be understood only through bilateral geography. China's presence changes the spatial equation. Spatial transformation. China, Tibet, Himalayas, South Asia. China's infrastructure, economic connectivity, and strategic presence in India's neighborhood create a third spatial dimension. Hence, India's neighborhood has evolved from India-centered South Asian space towards India-China competitive interdependent spatial system. This is a major advanced level argument. 19. From neighborhood to extended neighborhood. Modern geographical space is being compressed through roads, railways, ports, digital connectivity, aviation, energy grids, maritime routes. This creates time-space compression. David Harvey's concept. Time-space compression. Distance becomes less restrictive, economic interaction expands, strategic space expands, India's neighborhood becomes wider. Therefore, neighborhood is no longer purely territorial. It increasingly includes Indian Ocean plus Southeast Asia plus Gulf plus East Africa. UPSC optional synthesis. How geography shapes India's neighborhood relations. India's location. Himalayas, Indo-Gangetic Indian Ocean. Plains. China, Nepal, Pakistan, Sri Lanka. Bhutan, Bangladesh, Maldives. Security reverse maritime. Frontier migration security. Regional interdependence. Cooperation plus conflict. High-level conclusion. India's neighborhood relations are fundamentally a product of spatial interaction. The Himalayas create strategic frontiers, the Indo-Gangetic plains generate socio-economic continuity, transboundary rivers create ecological interdependence, porous borders facilitate human mobility, and the Indian Ocean gives India maritime centrality. However, geography is not destiny. Infrastructure, technology, institutions, and political choices can transform geographical constraints into opportunities. Political boundaries divide space, but geographical processes continue to connect it. One-line UPSC thesis. India's neighborhood policy is essentially an attempt to convert its geographical centrality from a source of vulnerability and asymmetric dependence into an instrument of connectivity, regional integration, and strategic influence.